From Hollywood, California, welcome to Reza Riffs with your host, Keith Reza.
Hey, Rifters, welcome to the show. Subscribe, rate, review, follow us on Patreon. Do the thing. I got the hiccups. Very not good when you start an interview, but um, yeah, it's yeah. Anyways, I'm very excited for today. Got a great guest. Kristanna Loken's gonna be here via Zoom. She has some new movies coming out that look very, very interesting. On IMDb, it always shows the upcoming stuff. And that's what I like to do when I click on the IMDb, like what's upcoming. And I really like there's one called No Address, which looks like about being homeless and stuff. So that looks kind of cool. And yeah, so like I'm kind of excited. I've always wanted to talk to her because I was a big Mortal Kombat fan. Guilty pleasure. But yeah, and then Terminator. Uh she she's awesome and I'm very excited. She was also on Happily Ever After where that was Nikki Cox's show. So yeah, guys, it's gonna be fun. Subscribe, rate, review, tell a friend, support the show. Couple dates. I will be at the Irvine Improv the second week of January. I know that's a little far, but that is confirmed with TJ Miller. And you could get your tickets at Irvine Improv or TJ Miller does not have a website.com. All right, guys. Enjoy Razor Riffs with Kristanna Loken coming up next.
Hello.
Hi, Kristanna. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. I had the hiccups like 5 minutes ago, so I'm really hoping they don't come back. That's like the worst, when you're
It's
about
the
to interview.
worst. Yeah, for sure. For sure.
I just need like a second. I'm so
No worries. Well, and I'm drinking sparkling water, so hopefully I won't get them too.
oh, this is so embarrassing.
No worries. No worries. No
Uh,
problem.
have you ever had that like when you're filming or something, you're like, all right, I'm ready for the scene, and then you just hiccup. You're like, oh God, I'm not ready for the
Hiccup
scene.
or sneeze, or it's like your body just does sometimes what it's going to do and you don't have control over it and you just have to go with it. And you know what? The good thing is we're all in a body, so we understand.
Oh, excellent. All right. Well, thank you so much for saying yes. I've been a big fan of yours. I've been trying to get you for a few years. I really admire you because I think Terminator was awesome, but you're also one of those girls where like you produce your own stuff. So I really like that and I admire that because
Thank you.
I think like that takes a totally different type of talent. You know what I mean?
Thank you so much. Yeah, to have that overview. And I think being in the business, I started when I was really young. And just being able to see all the pieces come together, obviously, which is what a producer does. They're like the conductor behind the orchestra. And I wanted to be able to have that kind of input and control and put together the projects that I thought would really be able to best showcase my ability and help develop them and choose the other actors, the cinematographer, the locations. And so, yeah, my first foray into producing was, I believe, the film I did called Lime Salted Love, an independent film.
Yeah.
And then it went from there. I co-exec produced the sci-fi series I did called Painkiller Jane that I also starred in. A film that I collaborated with my father on, and we shot it on my parents' farm in upstate New York, Fighting for Freedom, which has
I
just now been
I
re-released.
I was
Yeah,
gonna say that I watched that on the YouTube, the clips, and I
thank
thought that
you.
was great. I thought I was
Oh,
like,
thank
oh,
you so much. I
yeah,
appreciate that. Yeah, and Bruce Dern, I mean, such a legend, two-time Academy Award nominee.
yeah,
And then most recently starting my company Trio Entertainment. And we now have a film called Vice and Virtue that is just in the process of being distributed, and we're doing the film festival circuit. I'm also in that one as well. And that film is very near and dear to my heart because I was able to incorporate some very personal things with my son regarding his birth and things like that. So really just bringing projects to the fore that are important to me, with like my dad's script, as you saw, Fighting for Freedom, and that was inspired by true events about immigration issues that we're facing today. So yeah, I really enjoyed the producing end of it as well.
I wanted to ask you, like, what's it like making a script your dad wrote? Because I know, like, when you film a movie, there you do several takes and stuff, and it doesn't necessarily have to be word for the script, but like how is that where like you're like, I want to do it exactly like Daddy wants it, but then like maybe like I want to put my own little spin on it. You know what I mean?
It's a good question. He and I were very close, and we collaborate really well together. And so I think we communicate on kind of the same level. So we didn't have a lot of push or pull as to how we thought it should be done. We definitely agreed, and if we didn't, we talked it through pretty well. But it was really neat having him there on set with me. So the idea is we'll be able to collaborate on other projects together again in the future.
Yeah. I take screenwriting classes, and like maybe I'm not the best screenwriter because I'm a stand-up comedian, but like, I have ideas, you know what I mean? And all these writers, they're like very touchy, like if you like change, because we read the scripts in class to try and, get a tone for the feel and stuff. And then I remember this one guy was just like, why are you in this class? And I was like, I'm in this class to be famous.
Great answer. I'm sure he loved that. Oh, that's funny.
But yeah, so oh
Some,
man.
no, some can be. There are some, it seems like, and not all, but it seems like, well, there are certain films that you do or series television, and there's a certain culture around it.
Yeah.
And I think it depends on the network or the studio or the director. Some are very open to ideas. And, I remember in Terminator 3, Jonathan Mostow, sometimes his notes would just be like, go do that TX thing,
Right.
you just do it. And then there are other times where maybe like on a Botchko series, for example, or like a Law and Order or something, it's very much what's on the page. Like
Right.
you do that and you don't stray. So it really depends on how it is, or or there's some actors, like I remember working with David Spade on.
I love David Spade.
David Spade's awesome, yeah, great,
Yeah.
super fast thinker, so quick on his feet. And he had a TV series called Just Shoot Me for a while. You may or may not recall. And working with him, it was like every take was different. Like
Yeah.
you never knew what was going to come out of his mouth, and it kept you right there. It kept you really sharp and present, and yeah, and he's phenomenal. So I think it depends on a lot of different attributing factors.
I think that's why a lot of people don't like, a lot of actors for the most part, they don't really like doing stuff with like stand-up comedians like that, because that's a stand-up thing where they like to switch things around, and like
Right.
an actor just wants to shoot, go home with their kids or something. Stand-ups I feel purposely mess up for laughs, because if it's audience reactions, that's
That's
what they're
true.
looking for,
That's true too. It could be. Yeah, everybody's got their way of working, and one of the nicest compliments I received was actually from Bruce Dern, because he said, Kristanna, you're a great dance partner. If you have like Ginger Rogers and Fred Astaire and the way that they flow and move, you really want to find that hopefully with the actor that you're working with. And sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not. Sometimes you have to manufacture it a little bit harder, and sometimes there's just a really good flow. So I appreciated that compliment from him.
When you first started, like, because you did a couple episodes of Boy Meets World, which is awesome. It was
Mhm.
one of my favorite shows, But then you did the best show ever, Mortal Kombat. And
That's right.
like those are two different types of tones. And I was just wondering, like, when you because now mental health is a thing, like a lot of people, it's awareness with anxiety and stuff. Did you have, like, do you remember if you had anxiety when you were starting, because you're like, what if I'm doing this wrong, what if I get fired, stuff like that, you know what I mean?
You know, for me, I haven't put a lot of thought to that.
uh,
I think especially when I was younger, I just had so much fun going out there and doing it.
yeah.
I just did it. I think when you get older, you think more about like your mortgage payment, your other things that are going on in your life, and jobs and healthcare and things like that. Your mind expands in the scope of your responsibilities, especially if you have children and things like that. So you take things into consideration, and certainly this profession is not for the faint of heart.
Oh
You
no.
to have longevity, and this is what I tell some younger people if they're just trying to work their way in or they're curious, you really have to believe in yourself and your ability and be open to growing.
Uh,
There's no CEO of acting. I feel like I can always be learning something, I can always be enriching myself. And as I learn more as a human being and I have more life experience to draw from, it only enriches my craft as well because I've just lived through more life experience. So to really be open and aware, I think in life is one of the most important values, and have a good time.
yeah.
The other thing is like, don't take yourself too seriously. We're all just people out here trying to make the best of it and trying to fulfill our dreams, whatever your profession is.
No,
So really
definitely.
just
Yeah.
have a good time with it.
I'm really one of those people where, like, you can't take yourself too seriously, because I feel the second you take yourself too seriously, that's when you fail.
It's true. It's true. You can't in life, because
Yeah.
otherwise, it's you're scrutinizing and this and that and whatever, and it's not worth it. So
Yeah. Yeah. Like, for example, I was telling my father that I was going to interview you, and I remember we saw Terminator 3 together, and I had a massive crush on you and stuff, and he's like, "Don't ask her to kill you." I was like,
but he doesn't take himself too seriously either, does he?
No, I think I think he doesn't know he's funny. You know what I mean? Like, I think, like, that's kind of why I like him. I don't know. You know what I mean? Because, like, I kind of like people who don't know these things.
Yeah, yeah, that's
Eh,
great. So it
eh,
sounds like you have a nice relationship with your father.
yeah, I have a nice relationship with everybody, because I'm all about, like, making people feel good, and I like to. That's
Mm.
all I care about. You know what I
That's
mean?
great. That's
Yeah.
great.
It makes me feel good if you feel good and stuff like that. And then it makes me feel good to say, "Hey, Daddy, I need money for rent."
You've put enough into the positive bank, so then you can hit them with the zinger.
Yeah, exactly. But how was your experience on doing multi-camera sitcoms? Because that style has kind of gone away now.
It certainly has lessened. The last one I did was about 9 years ago or so, and that was for Girl Meets World.
Oh,
Well,
the
I
sequel.
The sequel, yes, I reprised my role from when I was a teen, on the show, to now all the teens are the adults of the teens. They're the
Yeah.
parents. I
And
don't know.
you married the geekiest guy,
That's right.
Mikas. So, like, it's like, I wish I would have auditioned for Mikas, because then 20 years later,
There you go. There
right,
you go. You get the girl.
I get the girl.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun with that. Those guys are great. They have a podcast. A few of it's Danielle and Ryder and Will who were on the
Yeah.
show. And they're just really lovely people. So we had a little reunion party, which was nice. But to your question about multi-camera, that is almost more of like doing stage theater, because you have a constant fourth wall
Yeah.
that you don't break, and the cameras are never setting up behind you and various things like that. And you play the scene out, so you rehearse all week, and then on Friday or whatever the last day of your weekday falls on, that's when you film it. And that was my first on-screen paid acting job, was also with multi-camera format, and that was As the World Turns,
Yeah.
where I played like the speed age daughter of Meg Ryan's daughter. Meg
Right.
Ryan had just left the show, and when she left, her daughter was like a toddler. But then 2 years later, now she's a young teen. You know, they do that on soap operas.
That's Hollywood magic.
There you go. They just, yeah, make it happen. So it was an incredible learning curve for me to, first of all, film one episode a day, which is unbelievably fast. I give those soap opera actors so much credit, because you are learning an incredible amount of dialogue, and it's all dialogue. You know, you're not
Yeah.
having these big action sequences or anything. So it's talking. So to learn camera angles, body positioning, and dialogue, it was a really helpful tool. So yeah, it's a different style and it's a different format, but also a lot of fun.
Yeah. I would think auditioning for like a soap opera like that is probably the hardest audition of all the auditions, because like when you go in and you read the sides, you're like, holy shit, I have to read 45 years of this crap just to know what I'm gonna talk in, or you mean like it's like, holy Lord.
You're playing the long game when you do a soap opera. That's for sure, and all the storylines and things that happen to your character. You know, it's unbelievable. I did the show for probably about 6 months.
Yeah.
Jason Biggs of American Pie fame, he played my boyfriend, my love interest on the show, and so
Oh my gosh.
that was fun. We laughed about it years later when we saw each other, I think at like the Vanity Fair party or something. And so it was great. It's, you know, and I got very lucky, because I grew up in upstate New York. My parents had a fruit farm, as I mentioned earlier there, or I don't know if I said the region, but and I went in. I had been doing summer stock theater and dance classes and everything, and then I saw this movie Beethoven. I don't know if you remember,
Oh,
with the big,
about the dog.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
It
And I
was the
love that
best
movie.
dog movie ever.
See, there we go. We have that in common too.
Oh my God. We're like best friends. I
I know.
love
Look at
this.
that. We were
Oh,
meant to meet.
yeah.
And Nicole Tom, the actress who played the daughter on the movie, we were about the same age, and I was watching the movie, and I said to my mom, like, how do I get to do that? Like, I want to do the next step. So my mom had been a successful model for many years, and then my dad had also done some acting, and so she said, well, we can take you to New York City, and you can meet your dad's old agent. And so I ended up doing that shortly thereafter and meeting him. And he said, okay, we'll start working with you. And that they said, as it happens, tomorrow there's this audition for As the World Turns. So I went in and I ended up getting the job. And I thought, well, this is really easy. Little did I know
Yeah.
that was like beginner's luck.
Exactly.
But it was great. No, it's a wonderful journey. And ironically, Nicole Tom, when I came out here, because again, I had auditioned for a job. I was living in New York. I'd auditioned for a job in LA, for Unhappily Ever After. That was going to be filming out here. They brought me out here. They screen tested me, and they said, okay, I told myself, if you get the job, you'll stay. If not, you're not going to be just another blonde out of work actress. You'll go back to New York. Well, I ended up getting the job and staying.
Yeah.
And then shortly thereafter, I meet Nicole Tom, who I had seen, and she becomes a good friend of mine. So it's like full circle. Life is so interesting that way. You never know.
So basically, in a weird way, you owe your entire career to Beethoven,
That's it, to the dog.
right? How
You're
awesome is that?
summarizing it.
Yeah. I had the exact same feeling when I saw Beethoven. I was like, Dad, how do I do that? And he's like, you could just be a veterinarian and be evil. I was like, oh, huh?
There you go. But you went into show business. See, you pursued your dream. So that's great.
Yeah, I mean, I went into stand-up business. Like I'm the worst actor you'll ever talk to. So like I'm just like, because I respect acting and obviously I did stand up to do acting, but once I started doing stand up because I have autism, I was very nonverbal. Stand up really made me verbal. So I think that's why I like it. You know what I mean? Like I don't really care about doing movies or anything. I just
It gave you a platform and
yeah,
probably really helped your confidence too, I would imagine.
yeah, definitely.
That's great for
Yeah.
you.
And I actually like I don't know, this might sound weird, but I remember you on Unhappily Ever After because I remember that show. I was in middle school and you know how boys rule will be boys, we were just talking, we'll be like, "Hey, who's hotter?"
Of
stuff like
course,
that.
yeah.
So that was like a show that I feel a lot of people actually did grow up on. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, thank you. I'm honored. Yes, and we
Yeah.
had the creators from Married with Children, and we had a really great cast and funny concept, and yeah, it was great. It was great to come out here and be working on that job and meet the people, and just then it was like I just launched into young actress life and pursuing things from here. I ended up doing homeschool and becoming emancipated so I could work longer hours. And it was great. I was following my dreams, and I always had the support of my parents. They always
Yeah.
believed in me because I was just so driven. It was like, this is what I'm doing, and this is
Yeah.
my goal. So,
And I think like that's something that like parents have like I think that's just been around for like the past, I don't know, 60 years or so. Because in the olden days, a lot of parents weren't really supportive of their kids' dreams. You know what I mean? They'd be like, you gotta build a house and get a wife or something like that.
yeah, no,
And
you're right. I think that's really changed a lot,
yeah,
and I'm really grateful that they supported me through that. To have the foundation of family, I think is just so wonderful. Or if you don't have that, friends or some kind of support system, whether it's in the spirituality realm or some kind of outreach, I think as human beings is just really important to have in general.
yeah. And I'm also one of those guys like I don't believe in the plan B, plan C thing. You know what I mean? They always say, "What's your plan B, plan C?" Like I always say, "Hey, I have one plan and it's my life. I mean, I'm gonna like go for it no matter what." You know what I mean? I don't know. Maybe that's like bad, but I don't know,
Well,
like
hey, you've made it happen, so that's great. How did you end up having your show?
my stand-up show
Well,
or
no, your podcast and everything.
oh, because just from stand-up, like I used to tour with Norm Macdonald. He was my best friend, and I wrote on his podcast, and he had a podcast, and then he was just like, "You should just do a podcast too." So that's how I did it,
That's great.
and like here's the thing: is like I'm very comfortable talking to celebrities for some reason because I feel in an odd way I'm also a celebrity, but I'm really bad at talking to like the girl at the grocery store and asking her for her number or something. Like I can't do that. And I think that that's a superpower on itself. You know what I mean? Because you know
Sure.
how it is. Like it's like you want to be nice to your fans and stuff, but like this is just like I don't feel this is like me fanboying. I feel this is just a conversation getting to know you. You know what I mean?
For sure, for sure. Well, I do think that's a gift. Maybe that's the place where you feel at ease, and that's great. I mean, I love being on set. I love being on camera, and I think for me, that's one of the places where I really feel the most comfortable in my life.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and so I can relate to that in that sense. To me, when I'm on set, it's like I know what everybody's job is. Everything makes sense to me. There's this kind of symbiotic relationship that I have with it, and yeah, it just works for me. There's a certain flow to it, and I think that's also something, of course, that's cultivated over many years too. And I'm sure of you doing the stand up and feeling comfortable there. It springboards itself, and I think if we want, right, we
Yeah.
can do that in other areas of our life. It just may not come as naturally.
Yeah, and I think it's like it's like that what that one scientist said. You have to put 1,000 hours into something to become okay, and another 1,000 hours to be good.
Yeah, yeah,
So then you think, why didn't you just say 2,000 hours?
yeah. Right. That's me. Yeah, it's true.
Like
It's
they're just trying to be clever with their words. I don't know,
very good.
but I wanted to ask you about Blood Rain because I thought
Sure.
I thought that was fantastic. And the thing about vampire movies is, they have their fan base. It's either they love them or they've never heard of it. You know what I mean? And it's such like the fantasy realm is just so remarkable because those to me seem like they would be the hardest movies to make.
So your question is,
Like, are fantasy films hard to make in that because, like, you wanna keep the fans, happy on the journey of the story?
hmm.
It's
Well, the one thing I think about fantasy films, whatever the genre is, if it's more sci-fi or like you said, uh, vampire or, who knows what.
yeah,
There's a great ability to be able to create whatever you want because there's no real confines based in reality.
yeah,
You can come up with this alternative world that you make work in the story given the confines of what you create that world to be.
yeah,
I think that's another reason why people really are drawn to fantasy films is because it is this alternate reality, like we have in Terminator with, Judgment Day and the timeline around that. Or we have, like you said, with Blood Rain, where people fantasize about like, what if I could live forever? What would that
yeah,
be like? I have to take this life force from another person or being to sustain my own, but then there's all these questions around how does that feel for someone to do that, I mean, all these massive ethical questions. And that's why most vampire movies that you see, they end in this place of despair if that's
yeah,
not really what would be the ultimate. But how do we know? We're not given that choice. So in those realms of fantasy, we can kind of dip our toes into that water and explore that and say like, well, what if I lived in this parallel universe where, you were amazing at talking to that girl in the grocery store, and
right, yeah, I
every time
know.
you did, you got the number, and so I think that's why we like fantasy. And certainly as an actor, it's fun to play fantasy because you can kind of create your own rules. Whereas, if I'm doing a straight drama, of course, which is then very different than comedy, there's a different set of rules. There's a different set of rules of grounded in reality. And that, of course, has a different weight to it because people can relate on an everyday level because they're living in reality, and the hardship
Yeah,
and the heartbreak and the incredible moments and all the things that make us human. So there's different nuance with whatever genre you take on. And then, of course, if it's a period piece, what was their reality in that time period and the confines around that?
exactly, yeah.
There's a lot, yeah, to take into consideration depending what type of project it is.
Yeah, I find that so fascinating too, like the History Channel. You know how like they tell you like, oh, the history of George Washington, and they tell you his story, and then it's an actor riding a horse, and he wants you to think that's George Washington. You know what I mean?
Right, right. The
Like,
reenactments, yeah. The
it's,
reenactments that you get. Yeah, it's true. It's true. Yeah, I always found, those reenactments on the crime shows.
oh my, like Forensic Files or something. Oh my lord,
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly. Like that just helps kind of underscore things a little bit. Like, let's just put you into that. We don't want just the talking heads. And, we're gonna put some actors in there, and we're gonna do a reenactment and get you in there. But it works because
It does. It's
yeah,
so
it pulls
crazy.
you in. It does.
It's like we want the audience to know why he killed his wife. It's like it's
Yeah.
so I don't know. It's just it's scary, but it does work because
Yep.
you know,
I think it humanizes it. Really, is what it comes down to,
yeah.
and that for me, the human trait is so key to relatability, right? So even going back to Terminator, I there were various moments that I put in that were either feminine based human moments or touches of these human traits so that you could empathize almost with TX, even though she's this killer robot.
Yeah.
You want to be able to root for her in some way. And how do we do that? That's the relatability of that human connection.
Yeah.
And I think in any project that I do, it's very important to be able to relate in some way and have that human bond. Because otherwise, at least for me as a viewer, I end up checking out.
No, yeah, definitely for sure.
And that can be from, I don't care what kind of character it is. They could be the farthest type of character, but if you're engrossed in the story and you're committed to what's going on in the story, you got to feel for the character in some
Yeah.
way.
No, definitely. And like I've actually been very respectful trying to stay away from Terminator questions because I'm sure that you get hounded by that a lot. And it's like, oh, I want to be unique and special, because I know what it's like to get 2.5 Men questions. You know what I mean? So like,
Right. Uh, well, thank you. I mean, I'm happy to talk about whatever you'd like to discuss
uh,
in relation to my career, but
yeah,
you have had a different approach, and I do appreciate that. So thank you.
yeah, definitely. But I do have one Terminator question if I could.
Sure, no problem.
Okay. So what was it like fighting Arnold Schwarzenegger in a red leather and then him in his black jacket? Like fighting in leather seems like that would be very hard.
Well, that is a great question, and it is a different question.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. We went through a whole series of costume tests, basically in front of the camera, all different colors, all different fabrics, and they ended upon this red leather suit that I take from the woman who I steal her car
Yeah.
in the beginning. And we had to make various different versions of that same costume just for practicality. I mean, there was one that we called it had what we called an action back on it, so it was easier for me to punch and move during the action sequences, and it had
Oh, that's cool.
more give and play to it.
Yeah.
The pants, they had just come out at the time, and frankly, I don't even know if I've seen it since, with a stretch leather, which was a real leather, but
Yeah.
it had, I don't even know how they did this. It had like a spandex behind it,
Yeah.
so it would keep shape. However, they may not be as durable as others. So again, depending on what the scene called for, then they had like a vinyl version of the pants if they wanted them just very straight. They had another jacket that was a little bit bigger so it could fashion the arm piece, the plasma cannon that I wore at some points. But it was hot.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, leather is hot. And we were shooting in LA in summer. So it was hot.
Yeah.
So, between takes, you don't want to move around too much. Although I was still training really, really hard for that job. So I would then go to my trailer. I had a exercise bike in my trailer. Actually, it may be even this. I love this bike, this exercise.
Oh.
It might even be, I think it was the same bike. I still use it all the time.
Oh my God, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
And I would go and I'd work out and I had my free weights and whatever. So, you couldn't help but sweat, but nonetheless, it was hot.
Yeah. One of the things I did like about your performance on that is because you didn't have much dialogue, but you communicated so well with your body and your language.
Mm.
And I thought that that was actually pretty unique because in the second one, Robert Patterson kind of did the same thing, but he had a lot of dialogue. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like I thought that that was a very unique, cool thing because
Yeah.
bad guys likable like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, the physicality, getting into well, the physics of that character was a layered approach. I did I completely changed my body type. First of all, I had a nutritionist, Philip Goglia. I put on about 15 pounds of muscle mass, so I got bigger. I got my body fat down to that of an Olympic athlete during that time.
Yeah.
I had a Krav Maga coach, Israeli martial arts. I had a weight trainer. I worked with the LAPD to learn how to use the 45.
Oh my
Um,
God.
my
That's
weapon.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the icing on the cake was, and this was Jonathan Mostow's idea, the director. He said, I think you should work with a mime coach to eliminate all those human traits like showing exertion while running or blinking while firing a weapon, things of that nature. And so I worked with this protege of Marcel Marceau, and he really helped me work with different energies against different things. I mean, it was fairly esoteric, but um, it worked in the end, I guess. And
Yeah.
getting that walk down, there was a very, of course, she has a very distinct walk and purposeful, and everything. It was very fine tuned.
Yeah. I think that that's so cool that you went to the LAPD and learned how the actual shoot that stuff. That's something because I'm writing a thriller movie and it's about like long short story. It's about a cop who loses his son to the underground kidnapping. So
Mm,
what I did was I went to the police station by my house and I just interviewed all the detectives who do kidnapping cases just so
mm,
I could get like a sense of how like what it's really like that.
yeah,
You know what I mean? So I
yeah.
thought that that was kind of cool that you said that because that I think that really does help what you're doing.
Yes. Oh, for sure. I mean, for me, it's always important to have things be as authentic as possible and as
Yeah.
believable as possible. So you really do want to go to the source for as much as you can. Otherwise, you can tell. I mean, if you don't really know what you're doing, you can see it. And so
Yeah.
the idea is to try to have, yeah, it be most authentic as possible.
Yeah. Well, I want to respect your time, but I do have two more quick questions
Sure,
if I
sure.
could.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you could talk about this yet, and if you can't, no worries. I totally understand. But I looked up on your IMDb your upcoming stuff, and it said no address. And then I looked at it, and the summary of that just seems so cool because it's about homelessness. And I was wondering, can you talk about that yet? Or
Sure. Sure. Yeah, I
oh,
absolutely can. No Address, I feel, is going to be an important film because of the homeless crisis that we are facing here in America, which is just this epidemic of rates of homelessness that we haven't seen. I mean, like since the Depression. I mean, it's astounding. And I'm not sure where you live. I think maybe you live in LA, but
yeah, Huntington Beach, baby.
there you
Woo!
go. Nice, nice. You're by the, you're in the cooler part of the city. But
Yeah.
um, after after the pandemic, after COVID, I hadn't been through Hollywood in a long time, and I had to take my son to a doctor's appointment, and I was just so saddened to see the number of homeless people living on streets where you would never see homeless encampment, full encampments.
Yeah.
So a good friend of mine, Julia Verdon, got on a tour bus with a homeless expert, and they went to 17 different cities across the nation, interviewing people from the homeless community. and also lawmakers and people who are doing something to help homeless people, and also looking at the system of like what works, what doesn't work, why is it broken. I mean, clearly nobody was expecting, you know, a pandemic to affect everybody like it did, but
Yeah.
how can we best help? So there's two parts actually. They've done a no address documentary,
Oh,
which
nice.
is going to be coming out in theaters this fall.
Oh, cool.
And then, inspired by people's stories that she heard, she created a scripted feature. So we have No Address, the film, as well. And that will be out, I believe, in the spring.
Oh, that's
And
awesome.
yeah, it's a mixture of different people's lives and how do we all end up homeless. So you have Ashanti and her character, you have Beverly D'Angelo, you have my character and Billy Baldwin, who plays my husband. And
Yeah.
it's this mixture of basically saying we could all be a few steps away from homelessness.
Oh,
So
for sure. Yeah.
how does this affect us in our daily lives? So we really hope to raise awareness with the film and help educate people and what they can do, even amid this homeless crisis. So yes, that is No Address. I got a couple other projects that are upcoming. Of course, I mentioned Fighting for Freedom, which is now been re-released streaming, so people can find that with Bruce Dern about the
R-
immigration crisis.
Written by your dad?
Written by my dad. Thank you very much, Chris Loken. That's right. I have to give him a shout out.
Represent.
Exactly. Thank you. Thank you. And then I've got, of course, we had Darkness of Man, which is a film I did with Jean-Claude Van Damme that came out in May, which is now streaming. I play his love interest.
Yeah.
And Vice and Virtue, the film that my company Trio Entertainment produced. People can look out for that upcoming in the not too distant future. And that's a film about choices. I know I touched a little bit how I was able to write some of my personal story into it, but you know, it really life becomes about a series of choices we make, and
Yeah.
certain choices take us in one direction, and other choices lead us down a different path. So we have vice or virtue, and how do those daily choices that we make affect our lives? So that's Vice and Virtue. And then last but certainly not least, a film that I shot not too far from where I grew up in upstate New York, called Dark Night of the Soul. And this is a very intriguing film about a woman who gets into a car accident and she's pinned under her car and she's facing death.
Oh my
And
God.
through a series of hallucinations, memories, thoughts, and she also has a very high position at the CDC. It's during a pandemic. Can she move on to the afterlife? Is she able to let go of this life as she knows it? Has she done enough?
Yeah.
Or does she still have more that she needs to do? And will she be strong enough in order to come back? And it's inspired from a poem actually called Dark Night of the Soul, which deals with that very theme. And Martin Cove, you may recall him from the Karate Kid.
Yeah. Cobra Kai. Yeah.
Cobra Kai, he plays my dad. And so that film as well, we're doing festivals right now and should be out in the upcoming months.
And your appearance on Reza Riffs.
Of course. I mean, first and foremost, there we go.
Oh my.
Please send me all the links and all that good stuff, and I will happily spread the word and great cheer.
Oh, you're so sweet. Where can the folks at home follow and support you? You have Instagram, Facebook, something like that?
That's right. Yep. I've got Instagram, which is KS Loken, my official Facebook page, and X, which is at Loken Kristanna.
All right. Well, thank you so much for saying yes. I hope you had fun. It was an honor to become your best friend for 45 minutes. So thank you so much.
Hey, it was my pleasure. It was really great talking to you, and I certainly wish you all the best of luck.
All right. We'll meet up sometime and we'll get a chicken.
Sounds good. I like it.
All right. Have a great day.
Be well. Bye-bye.
All right. All right, guys. Subscribe, rate, review. That was the interview. Tell a friend with Kristanna Loken. And we'll see you guys next week on Razor Riffs.